Brand disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by individuals on this platform, the callers plus invited guests, are their own. The information you hear does not reflect the overall views of all parties associated with this brand. We encourage everyone to research all things heard live or via archive for edification purposes. Discretion is advised.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to the Big Talk Radio.
Help keep the show on the air. You want to help. Send a donation to PayPal. The email is DT4U@gmail.com or through Cash App. $Sal Show. Thanks for your support.
Peace. What it is your brother Tyvon Swainell, a.k.a. the Orthodox Moor, a.k.a. the Seven Pillar Saracen. And this is the third installment of Israelite Intelligentsia here on Debate Talk for You. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Shout out to everybody watching. Shout out to Sal Showtime. Appreciate you for letting us use the platform. And this is part 2 of another look at the Pews, the scholarly consensus. There's been a lot of back and forth this past week on this topic on a lot of different channels. But something that I think that is going to miss is the scrutinization of what the scholars have actually said and the implications thereof. So I wanted to do a quick show today. Not too long, hopefully under an hour. Just going over what the scholars said, what the claims are. By the scholars, what the claims by the layman are, and what the implications of the claims made by the scholars are. So without further ado, I'm going to play a few videos that show what the scholars have said, and then I'm going to get into a presentation on such. So without further ado, here we go, fam.
Over and over. But the one thing with the Pews, I have to say, I'm going to release the raw footage so everybody could see every pew. I think that's only fair because the West, although Reggie made the argument a while ago about West, I see why the church says it's West African Arabic. Because it does look like that script, but looking like don't make it that's what it is. But hey, who am I? I'm just saying.
Well, Garfield, what does the consensus say about that script? What does it say
about what the script on the
pews? Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if there's really a consensus. I think everybody that looks at it is because what we do is we look at it from our perspective, from the people that's made the claims.
Now this is where you got me confused, Garfield, because I thought you said on another channel that the documentary showed and proved that our people weren't illiterate when they came over, i.e. they could write.
Yeah, of course. Okay. What's that?
So is that the scholarly consensus of the Pews that it demonstrates that we can write or no?
I wouldn't know. I would have to know how many scholars.
Okay.
No, for real. I would have to know how many scholars to jump up and say the scholarly consensus. I'm not doing that with that. I don't know. The Pews is, you see, for the white folks at the University of Cincinnati.
I respect that. That's real smart.
Garfield, you always appeal to that method.
Yes, I
do.
So
now you don't know.
I don't know if there's a consensus on the Pews because
remember,
hold on. That's an inside joke. But remember, the gentleman is basically saying University of Cincinnati is binding for a reason because it's been argued about by many people. We need to look at the consensus of all the people that have reviewed it, then draw a conclusion on what the consensus is. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know what the consensus is. You know, hey, who am I?
Are you ready? Oh man.
Yeah, I'm ready. Brother.
All right, come on. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Go ahead, bro. You got the floor.
All right. Peace and love, everybody.
I sent you an email. I sent you an email. Check your email.
All right. So this is Dr. Ephraim Isaac. You could look him up on, just Google him, just to know who we're talking about before I show the documentary, right? He's a brother that was born in Ethiopia. He's an Ethiopian American. He went to Harvard University. He's a scholar of ancient Semitic languages and civilization,
and African/Ethiopian Languages and Religion. He is the director of the Institute of Semitic Studies at Princeton, New Jersey, and the chair of the board of the Ethiopian Peace and Development Center. Dr. Isaac, listen to what he holds now. He holds a bachelor's in divinity from Harvard Divinity, a PhD in Near Eastern languages. Let me say it again.
That's up right up his alley. That's right up his alley.
PhD.
That's his lane.
There you go. All right. So we're not going to go into anything else further about
And he an Israelite? He Hebrew?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is, my brother. Can't get around that. So now let me share this documentary right here. Let me share this documentary here.
Hold on, Alton. Hold on. Y'all got to hold on.
It's called The Cryptic Quest. All right. Cryptic Quest. If anybody wants to look it up, as you can see, the video the brother sent me is unlisted because he sold the documentary. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, the University of Cincinnati, why would a scholar, a PhD Harvard scholar, fly down to look at the Pews if it wasn't something major for them to review? There's been debates for this for years in the African American community. So now,
Mr. Backtastic said, say, yeah, you ain't lying. Go ahead.
All right, hold on a second here. All right, here we go.
And in shape,
make it big.
Many of them look alike. Ha, sa, ra, ri.
So all these letters are Ethiopian.
Yeah, that is Ethiopian. Okay. This is ha, this is sa.
Yeah.
And this could be na if it was straight like this.
There is now evidence to clearly show that some of the slaves came with skills of writing, which transcends the traditional models of illiteracy, albeit most were illiterate. In fact, most people from Europe and the West were illiterate in that.
All right, so that's the first 45 seconds. Let me click now to another section. All right, so people could see exactly what's going on. All right, so we are at 30. What is this? All right, here we go. All right, here we go.
In 1733, my fifth great-grandfather,
turn it up a little bit,
Jewish immigrant from Frankfurt on Oder, came across to America on a ship with about 40 other Jewish immigrants to Savannah. At the time, Savannah was a bit of a wilderness. The Jewish immigrants who arrived there were actually trying to reach Charleston. In terms of just Savannah in general, those Jewish immigrants settled there, arrived there in 1733. So that's 120 years of Jewish presence with African presence in a place by the Civil War, which had something like 15,000 people as its population.
The Jews who came to North America, while they certainly wanted to retain their religious identity, also certainly in terms of an economic livelihood, I mean, they did want to acculturate to their surroundings.
All right, hold on 1 second, Barry. Let me just pause it for 5 seconds and let's play some more of this.
You're talking about a close-knit community where all strata of life interacted and overlaid and intertwined.
The diverse community in Savannah provided a unique situation where Black slaves and Jews were living side by side. Could this be a possible explanation for what we see on the side of the pews? Are there actually Hebrew letters mixed in with the Ethiopian letters?
Well, then that would look like a cursive top. As it is,
that's right.
As it is, it also, I have to see this closer up, but it also looks like a close-up.
Mute your mic, they say, Garfield, while they talking. Mute your mic.
Okay. However, nothing else on this panel really looks like a Hebrew letter. When you have something that looks like a Hebrew letter, it's in a context of things that don't look like Hebrew letters. So that the issue Again, the issue is not the individual sign. It's what the signs add up to.
So far, none of the letters, symbols, or markings seem to form words, which may imply that they had a different purpose entirely.
All right, give me another 5 seconds. Actually, I just text Alvin Elmore. He said he's at a video shoot because I wanted him to come on because he's the guy that actually filmed it. You know.
Yeah, he's more than welcome to come on.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
The use of alphabetic symbols in magic is very well known, it's very ancient. In Ethiopia, for instance, already in the 4th and 5th centuries, they were using decorative letters, not directly in terms of symbolic 3 or 4 words, letters, but in terms of a geometric figure. A lot of the early magic, what we call abracadabra, they are not complete words, but they are letters. There is one prayer that is akhila sharakhila sharakhila sharakhila. I mean, they use just a few of those words, and sometimes it may be just like ha 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 la 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 ba 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 ga 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 ga. This is, of course, the way of enticing the demon and defeat them.
All right. Yeah, man, that's it right there, bro.
But that does fall along the lines of what Mr. Dante said he ran through with that Cambridge stuff right there. That might actually explain. Well, let me see what y'all say. That might actually explain some of the confusion. Where's he at? Go ahead. You want to say anything else once I'm looking through these comments? Washington must got another email. As soon as I put your name in, it came up from 2 years ago unless you got a new email. I couldn't touch the paste because I don't got a message on your phone. Go ahead, Garfield. You got the floor. What you got to say on the whole thing?
I would just say that what we can do is go with what the scholarship has said. So if Dante has something where someone else has said something, and then look at what everybody who has actually done the work, and then draw your own conclusion. That's how you work with a scholarly from a scholastic point of view. But I do appreciate Dr. Ephraim Isaac being a part of this and giving some context. You know, he's saying there's no words there, but you have people saying like alphabetic letters in a chant like of some sort of magic. But the beauty of it that I got from it, that I'm glad that I knew about this, is that there are Africans that could write in the Americas before writing English.
That's right.
Shows that
Europe was still in a lot of ignorance.
Right. Yeah. That's what the scholar said too. So that's another
case. Because a number of the supporters of Richardson and Brown kept asking me where my scholars are or which scholars I had reached out to, I decided that, if they insist, I can at least send out a few emails to a few different professors. And that's what I did. To each professor I wrote to, I sent 2 images. The first image I attached was of this particular pew from this angle. As you might have noticed, this is precisely the pew Kelly Richardson and I gave competing interpretations for, as I offered a hypothetical Arabic interpretation of the markings, and he offered a solitreo interpretation. This is covered in detail in my previous video. The second image which I attached to each email was this one, which is the same pew, just with some highlights added to guide the eyes, so to speak. Along with those images, I sent each professor the exact same email text, which read as follows, quote, "Forgive the intrusion of this email. In Savannah, Georgia, USA, there is a church, First African Baptist Church, which has pews which were built by slaves. On the outside of the pews which those slaves built are a number of markings. Some have claimed that the markings might be Hebrew, and others have claimed that the markings might be Arabic. Recently, someone has suggested that one pew might even have material from the Quran. But the person who made that suggestion is not any sort of expert in Quranic Arabic. I am writing to ask if you might offer some insight here. I have attached 2 images. The first image simply shows a pew unhighlighted. The second image shows the same pew with highlights as part of one person's attempt to elucidate what might be there. Nota bene, the portion on the right in the second image is in a different color because one person suggested that it might be the end of a different sentence. Could you tell me if, in your opinion, that looks to you or to any of your colleagues like it could be Hebrew, or if it looks like it could be Arabic, and if it might be the latter, if there is any possibility of it resembling anything in the Quran? And If you feel there might be any discernible language in the markings, whether Hebrew or Arabic or something else, are you or anyone you know able to suggest a possible translation? Apologies again for the intrusion. Thanks in advance for any help in this matter. Sincerely, AA. End quote. So I received multiple replies, and the first email that I'd like to show is the reply I received from Samar Ali, professor of Arabic at the University of Michigan. His response reads as follows, quote, "Thanks for reaching out, and this is super interesting. It looks like Arabic in the West African script, and it could very well be a 3-word snippet of chapter 114 of the Quran, which nearly every Muslim would know and use for ritual prayer. I can't be certain without more context, but it looks like Al-Nas, Ilahil Nas, humanity, the God of humanity, from the middle of that chapter. The whole text of chapter 114 is very short. In the name of God, merciful to all, compassionate to each, I seek refuge with the Lord of humanity, the King of humanity, the God of humanity, who whispers in the hearts of humanity, of jinn and humanity. Besides prayer, it's used in stressful or frightening situations to summon God's protection. Let me know if I can be of any further help." End quote. So while this professor, Samar Ali, said he is not certain, he does say that it looks like it could be a West African rendering of a few words from the last chapter of the Quran, precisely the chapter I had appealed to when I proposed an Arabic reading for this pew. Also worthy of note, his point that this text was memorized and recited in particular by those in stressful or frightening situations could loan itself well to the idea of this being a text which certain slaves had memorized. Now let me show you another couple of emails, in particular one with a more definitive answer. This one is from Geoffrey Kahn, who is the current Regius Professor of Hebrew at Cambridge in England. The Regius Professor, or Regius if you want, you can say Regius. The Regius Professorship of Hebrew at Cambridge is a Hebrew chair established by the King of England 480 years ago. So this is a serious Hebraist, and he also studies and teaches Arabic. So Professor Khan's initial reply to my email was as follows, quote, "Thank you very much for your message and for the photos of the pews in Savannah. The writing is Arabic and contains verses 2 and 3 from the final chapter or surah of the Quran. The text visible in the photo reads in Arabic, Sovereign of mankind, the God of mankind. When do you think this was written on the pews? Was it written by the slaves who built it? Best wishes, Geoffrey." End quote. So I wrote back to Professor Khan with the following, quote, "Greetings, Professor Khan. Thank you very much for your reply. Regarding your question, I do not know for certain when the markings were made. The only thing I have is the church's oral tradition, which posits that the same slaves who made the pews were the ones who made those markings. Ergo, assuming that is correct, the markings would date to the 1850s. I really appreciate you sharing your conclusion regarding what appears in those markings. Forgive me if this question is somewhat redundant, but just to be clear, would you say it is definitely Arabic and not Hebrew? The context of my question is the alternate suggestions which have floated around, some positing that the markings should be Arabic and others positing that the markings should be Hebrew. Sincerely, AA." End quote. In response to that, Professor Khan wrote a second reply, which read in part as follows, quote, "The writing is clearly Arabic and is clearly from the Quran, the final surah, Surat al-Nas. It is certainly not Hebrew," end quote. Now, seeing how Richardson, Brown, and others treated the alleged positions of Boonis and Katz, can you imagine how they would react if Cambridge's Hebrew chair said that the markings are clearly Hebrew and certainly not Arabic? I think we can all agree that they would declare that the debate is finished and the matter is closed. So this begs the question, now that I have an email from Cambridge's Regius Professor of Hebrew saying that the markings are clearly Arabic and certainly not Hebrew, should I play the same game? Should I say that the debate is closed and that mere students cannot say anything in response? Of course not. The reason why is because, as I said, that is not how academia works. No scholar would want me going around telling people that they cannot ask questions, or that they cannot raise objections, or that they cannot investigate the matter for themselves. This email does not have to end the discussion, and it especially should not be a tool, used to try to silence students of language. And, to drive this point home, let me share a third email. This one is from Mohsen Gudarzi, an assistant professor of Near Eastern Studies at the University of Minnesota. His email takes a different approach. His email reads in part as follows, quote, "Thank you for your email. I've looked at the images carefully, and I don't believe they contain Arabic writing. Now, it is not impossible for the markings to represent a highly cursive, idiosyncratic, and/or local form of Arabic script. Someone with expertise in West African Islam could be a better judge of this. Nor is it impossible to read into them certain recognizable phrases from the Quran. I can read into them 2 phrases, in fact. But these would constitute imposition of a text upon the markings, which can be done basically with any set of sufficiently complex traces. End quote. Now, I imagine at this point, some might be thinking, wait, what? Why would you share that email? You should have ended it with the email from the professor at Cambridge. But I would prefer that we at least try to be somewhat intellectually honest. Moreover, I think Professor Gudarzi's email is helpful. There is a real possibility of an imaginative mind making connections based on familiar features and patterns while looking at something which is actually random or naturally occurring. And one can read up on, things like pareidolia and apophenia for more on this possibility. Finally, let's be honest. What sorts of replies we might get from certain professors can also be influenced by what precise images are shown, how those images are highlighted, and how the questions are worded. So there are multiple layers of interpretation and influence at play in these exercises. For example, try writing to different professors with this image, without any highlights, noting that some claim Hebrew appears on the pew and others claim Arabic appears on the pew, while also clearly saying up front that one other possibility is that these are just random or naturally occurring markings, like medullary rays or scratches, made at random. I think we all know that we're unlikely to get too many replies declaring that to clearly be Hebrew or Arabic if that approach is taken. On that note, I hope everyone enjoyed this discussion on the recent appeals to scholars, and I really am looking forward to the comments of others, and I'm looking forward to see where this discussion goes from here. On that note, God bless.
Go ahead, Garfield. You got the floor. What you got to say on the whole thing?
I would just say that what we can do is go with what the scholarship has said. So if Dante has something where someone else has said something, and then look at what everybody who has actually done the work, and then draw your own conclusion. That's how you work with a scholarly from a scholastic point of view. But I do appreciate Dr. Ephraim Isaac being a part of this and giving some context. He's saying there's no words there, but you have people saying like alphabetic letters in a chant like of some sort of magic. But the beauty of it that I got from it, that I'm glad that I knew about this, is that there are Africans that could write in the Americas before writing English.
That's right.
Shows that
Europe was still in a lot of ignorance.
Right. Yeah. That's what the scholar said too.
Yeah, peace, family. So now that we've seen what the scholars have had to say about the situation, we're going to compare and contrast what they've said and see what kind of logical conclusions we can come to based upon what they've said. So real quick, let me go ahead and put this on present. Be nice. Come on. Play nice. Thank you. Again, another view on the Pews Part 2, the scholarly consensus. Now that we know that multiple scholars have weighed in on the Pews, either through correspondence or through involvement in the Cryptic Quest documentary, it seems relevant to come to some understandings as to the consensus of said scholars and the implications thereof. The claims about the pews made by laymen have been as follows. The markings are scribbles and scratches and not language. The markings are possible natural growth in the wood. The markings are possibly a form of West African Arabic. The markings are possibly a form of Ladino or Soletreo. The markings are possibly multiple scripts of Africa, etc. The markings are possibly some form of trade language. The markings are possibly ciphers, codes, and maps. These are the scholars that have weighed in so far publicly that we know of. If there's any other scholars that you know that have weighed in on this, please let me know so I can add it to the list and add their input in. There's a few scholars that have not been put on this list because they've decided to step out of the conversation and have asked not to be cited in this conversation. So there have been more people who have talked about this, but they will not all be cited. But it goes as follows. Dr. Ephraim Isaac, Director of Semitic Studies at Princeton. Dr. Richard Saracen, Professor of Rabbinics and Liturgy at HUC. Dr. Jeffrey Kahn, Regius Professor of Hebrew at Cambridge. Samar Ali, Associate Professor of Arabic and Islamic Studies at the University of Michigan. Mohsen Godarzi, Assistant Professor of Near Eastern Studies at the University of Minnesota. I would like to note real quick so everyone understands, out of all of these people that are commenting on this, 2 of them are multilingual in terms of like understanding Semitic languages. So Dr. Ephraim Isaac and Dr. Jeffrey Kahn are very proficient in multiple Semitic languages. I would like to point that out. As far as I'm concerned, they would be the 2 top people in this, followed by Dr. Richard Saracen, and then followed by Sam Ali, etc. That's my personal opinion. You don't have to take that at all. That's just what I think. But Dr. Ephraim Isaac positively identified some Ethiopian letters in the Ge'ez script on one pew. I don't recall him saying anything concerning Ge'ez being on all the pews. From what I saw from the documentary, and again, I have not seen the entire documentary. What I'm saying is based upon the clips that have been made available to the public. I am definitely open to correction based upon any other information that comes out based upon the documentary. So please keep that disclaimer in mind. So again, when you watch the documentary, from what I understand, he's identifying Ge'ez on one pew. He also gave some Ethiopic theological reasonings as to why one might find single letters and not words, with examples of prayers, etc. Next, we have Dr. Rabbi Richard Saracen. He possibly identified some Hebrew letters on one pew. However, he felt there was a problem with the letters being surrounded by things that were not Hebrew letters, and poses the issue. It's what the signs add up to. So I don't think he would have. I don't think he's positively stating that there's Hebrew letters. I think he's stating that there's possibly Hebrew letters, and I think for him he's looking for them to add up to a word for them to be declared Hebrew. Now again, he's looking at one pew in the documentary. I'm assuming he had access to all the pews. I don't know what his view is on all the pews, but from the documentary, what we could see is his view on that one pew where he's identifying a couple of letters, etc. So I think his opinion is just based upon that one pew. Again, I stand to be corrected by any other information that comes out from the documentary. Garfield repeatedly stipulated that he had a clip that to where Ephraim Isaac and others apparently make the negative claim, the definite negative claim that there is no Hebrew on the pews. But to date, and given multiple chances, he has yet to produce that clip. So if it ever gets produced, again, like I said, I stand to be corrected. But until then, I got to roll with what's out there. Going forward, Dr. Jeffrey Kahn positively identified Arabic letters on one of the pews. I gotta fix that. Let me fix that right now, because I'm one of them type of dudes. Forgive me, family. One of the pews. Bam. There we go. Dr. Jeffrey Kahn positively identified Arabic letters on one of the pews. He also positively identified an ayat and surah 114 from the Quran on the same pew. And to be clear, Dr. Jeffrey Kahn had access to only photos of a single pew. He did not have access to all of the pews. So again, I don't think what he's saying would apply to every pew. I think it could only logically apply to the pew that he saw. Again, he's also proficient in Hebrew, in Aramaic, etc. Associate Professor Samir Ali said that it looked like Arabic in the West African script that could possibly be a 3-word snippet of the 114th surah of the Quran. Professor Khan also had access to only photos of a singular pew. He did not have access to all the pews. So again, I think what he has to say would only be applicable to the photos he talked about, not to all the pews. Assistant Professor Godazi did not believe the writings contained Arabic, however, admitted that it could be a form of what I say a form of West African Arabic. I think he said it a form of localized Arabic, and suggested a scholar on West African Islam be consulted. He said that one could possibly read 2 phrases from the Quran, and this is from the second part. I guess the second picture to where Abu had outlined some things, but thought that this was imposing on the markings. Again, he only had photos of the one pew. So I don't think he's dismissing anything outright on all the pews. I think again, his opinion can only deal with the one pew that he looked at logically. Going forward. So the scholarly consensus on the pews. One scholar was able to positively identify Ge'ez letters on one pew. However, no words in Ge'ez were identified. One scholar possibly identified Hebrew letters on one pew, but was not able to identify any words. One scholar positively identified the 114th surah of the Quran and the phrase sovereign of mankind, God of mankind. A second scholar possibly identified the 114th surah in the West African Arabic and the phrase God of mankind. One scholar thought speculation would be imposing on the markings and deferred authority on the matter to scholars of West African Islam. Again, if anybody disagrees with that assessment, I'm open to correction. I would love a discussion on the matter. I'm not trying to act like I'm the end-all be-all on this. This is just my understanding of what I'm seeing and reading and hearing and understanding and whatnot. So, again, always open for correction. Again, not only am I open to it, I invite it. And again, to be fair, there will be those that say that my interpretation of what the scholars have said is based upon my own confirmation bias. They will most likely say that at best, Ge'ez letters have only been hypothesized and that Quranic phrases have only been hypothesized. And again, those are fair criticisms. To date, there are no scholars making the claim that markings are all scribbles and scratches with no language. To date, there are no scholars making the claim that the scrutinized markings on the pews are natural wood growths. To date, there are no scholars making the claim of the markings adding up to a code, cipher, map, or trade language. To date, there are no scholars making the claim of Ladino or Soletreo. To date, there are scholars that have positively and possibly identified Ge'ez, Hebrew, and West African Arabic letters and Quranic phrases. Now, what that does right there, family, is that opens up the conversation on this here about, let me go back. My fault. About this here, about there possibly being codes, ciphers, maps, and trade languages. Again, if 3 different types of letters and scripts have possibly been identified, and again, there's also Bakongo symbols in the church. So that's 4 basic language types there. Bakongo, Arabic, Hebrew, and Ge'ez. That opens up the conversation to a code, cipher, map, or trade language concept that now has to be ruled out, as far as I understand it. Again, open to correction and dialogue on the matter. For anyone to say that the consensus of the scholars is that there is nothing legible on the pews would be completely false at this juncture. Any hypothesis of the scholars involved, and again, this is for people saying that you can't say anything definite about what was said. You got to just say it's all hypothesis. Okay, I'm with that. Any hypothesis of the scholars involved would have to be either proven or disproven at this juncture. It cannot be dismissed on its face. One more time. Any hypothesis of the scholars involved would have to be either proven or disproven and cannot be dismissed on its face. Again, this is my best understanding of the information, family. This is my very best understanding of the information. Hold on. I'm gonna play something real quick. Let me bring my brother in.
Go ahead, Garfield. You got the floor. What you got to say on the whole thing?
I would just say that what we can do is go with what the scholarship has said. So if Dante has something where someone else has said something, and then look at what everybody who has actually done the work, and then draw your own conclusion. That's how you work with a scholarly from a scholastic point of view. But I do appreciate Dr. Ephraim Isaac being a part of this and giving some context. You know, he's saying there's no words there, but you have people saying like alphabetic letters in a chant like of some sort of magic. But the beauty of it that I got from it, that I'm glad that I knew about this, is that there are Africans that could write in the Americas before writing English.
That's right.
Shows that
Europe was still in a lot of ignorance.
Right. Yeah. That's what the scholar said too.
Oh, okay. Yara said he got a dip, so never mind. But yeah, family, I'm gonna keep it real short and sweet. That is my assessment. Again, open to dialogue and critique and all that type of stuff. I'm not proclaiming to be the end all be all on this topic. In fact, Abu will be coming on this channel. We will be having a discussion on this very same topic, going over the arguments, going over the evidence, etc., and trying to see where everything lies or whatnot. I'm looking forward to that conversation. And later on today, family, at 5:30 Eastern and 2:30 Pacific, we will have Brother Benaiah Israel coming on to talk about the people of the First African Baptist Church, some of them historically identifying as being Israel, and his information on such and his proofs for such. I recently went on the Dagger Squad channel and showed some of his had them show some of his videos documenting the documentation from the church, and them calling people like fathers in Israel and identifying as Israel as the community and whatnot. It ruffled a few feathers and whatnot. Oh, okay, hold on. I believe my brother just stepped back in. Hold on, what's good here? Uh-oh. Oh, now I gotta go switch up right quick. Hold on. Let me go change clothes. Hold up. Since you rocking out like that, what's good?
Yeah, shalom, Mark. Shalom,
fam. What's good with y'all? How y'all doing?
Shalom, Mark. Y'all can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I just wanted to stop by briefly, man, and say, man, just good show. I think this is, I like this segment is, is a little bit even more in depth into the minds and the idea of the actual scholars and what they were actually saying, because I believe a lot of the argument has been lost in translation when it comes to what the scholars have actually said. And so I just appreciate this work you've done on this. I think this not just furthers it conversation, but brings a lot more clarity to the understanding of the topic and the discussion. So, man, good work, bro.
All praise to the Most High.
All praise.
So what do you brothers think about what I was saying in terms of what the scholars are saying now opens up the conversation about having to disprove the codes, the ciphers, the maps, and the trade languages, etc. whatnot?
I think it's absolutely right on. It lines up with everything that we see when we actually go out there, when we talk to people who are doing the tours. It also lines up with exactly what Dante was talking about. And I wanted to share that article because he did reference it. I don't know if people take the time to write down these articles or these sources that people source and share. Hold on, I want to clear this one thing out real quick. I don't want y'all in my business. but it becomes imperative that we research articles when people give us great sources. And, you know, a lot of us have our own sources, but then when people help you and they give you other sources, it's important to deal with this. So Dante was saying that, and I agree that, you know, when our people come here, you know, they're dealing with a mixture of like Maghrebi Arabic, ancient Israelite, I think it is, and Patois. And I'm going to bring that up in a second. We're going to see, like you said, some form of lingua franca, some type of interaction. And this is why you see scholars giving you multiple opinions on the various things that we see on the pews. Abu had made a good point. One, it depends on which, you know, I'm looking at all three symbols. That's hot. Abu made a point about at some point in time, you're going to see, it depends on what pew you're looking at and depends on how you're phrasing your questions and things like that. So I agree with that point. We've never come out and said that it's only cursive Hebrew, it's only this. Those that try to make that accusation, it's clear, you know, what we're saying. But it's also clear that to just throw away the concept that we would see some form of a cursive Hebrew letter or any type of connection to a Hebrew or Israelite thought process is flawed. It's a flawed methodology, right? So I'm going to share my screen if I can really quick, if that's okay, Moore. I wanted to let you finish. I didn't want to come in and, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I want to do one thing real quick, and then I'm going to camelback off something you just said, and then I'm going to pass the rock right back. So Elaine 72 was saying, he said scholars possibly said, no, I'm saying possibly identified. So when it comes to the Hebrew letters on the pews, Rabbi Saracen said that he believes that he could see some Hebrew letters or whatnot, but he wanted to see some context with it. He wanted to see what it built into, right? So I'm trying to be as charitable as possible because for some people they'll take that as like, no, he affirmed Hebrew letters, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that concept. But some people would take that as he gave a hypothesis on Hebrew letters. So I'm trying to be as charitable as possible and say that he possibly identified Hebrew letters. Now, when it comes to the Ga'iza and it comes to the Arabic, that was positively identified and definitely identified, and done so by the linguists who had the most background in Semitic languages, who were multilingual in Semitic languages. So also to what Anonymous is saying, and to throw back to what he's talking about, in terms of being like multilingual and whatnot. So we also see to where Ronald Dalton Jr. was in a conversation with Rabbi Harry Rosenberg and a West African brother identifying as Israelite, talking about a Yoruba Torah found in Moroccan Arabic. Again, that's that Maghrebi Arabic that Anonymous was talking about. Aramaic, that's that ancient Israelite he's talking about, and the Yoruba script. So with that, I'm going to pass it right back to you, brother. Go ahead and share your screen.
Con, excellent point. You guys can hear me okay? Because I'm looking away from the mic.
Perfect.
Awesome. And so I'm sharing this, and I strongly suggest y'all just read this article, right? And I'm glad that Elder Yar is here because he can speak specifically to the concept that God is gonna be referenced about as it pertains to this language. I mean, he has a whole presentation on a lot of this. And so the problem is that we want to fight, right? Everybody wants to have a fight, but we can't be scholastically honest about a lot of different things. And I'm hoping that we can begin to shed some of this dishonesty. Let me make sure this is the right screen.
Elusive One asked, does anyone know how many pews have the markings in that church besides the one pew shown? That's a fantastic question. Right. Fantastic question. And what this conversation does with the scholars is it opens up the necessity of all the pews being cataloged and categorized based upon what markings are on them. But fantastic question. Thank you for that question.
Brother, do you see the article that I'm sharing? I want to make sure I got it queued up right.
Yep.
All right. Let's go ahead and get this done real quick. Am I sharing?
Yep, you got it.
Okay. So this is an article that Dante had referenced, all right? And it's called Black Jews, the Religious Challenge or Politics versus Religion. All right,
Real
this
quick,
is
can you
article.
when you're done, can you put the link in the back chat here so I can actually put it in the regular chat?
Yep, I got you. I
No
got you
worries.
as soon as I'm finished.
You go.
You do have to have a JSTORs account to get here. So whatever you brothers and sisters have to do to get that, you know what, it might be on Dante's on his website though. So I'll talk to him and see if he has it. Or we'll reach out to him, I should say. Talking like I just got a great, like I know the brother. We'll reach out to him and see if he has it on his website. The concept of this is to understand anyone who has this erroneous claim or belief that there is no pre-colonial and post-colonial Israelite presence in West Africa, you're completely going against scholarship, okay, at this point. And you are now showing your bias. Now, all I'm going to do, I completely urge you to read this entire article because there are some amazing points that are made, not just about when they get here during slavery period, but also before this, and how there is all this scholarship, all of this actual work that proves the existence of this people and what they would have been doing, and how it is pertinent to study the culture of these people before you just chump something off or throw something away as if no, this doesn't exist, or no, you're trying to claim onto a heritage that doesn't belong to you. Okay, so I'm going to go, the quote that I'm going to go is on page 235, because this is specifically the quote that the brother Dante had brought out. And the reason that this becomes important is because it speaks to what we were talking about, this possibly being a trade language, or this possibly being some form of a mixture of languages, just to be, quaint, just to be brief about it. So I'm going to read here. I want to start here. Where do we see God be? Here we go. So it says, in southern Nigeria, the natives call Black Jews the strange people on the Imo Yokuram or Imo Yokwam. They are called the B'nai Ephraim or Ephraim, the sons of Ephraim. They claim that their ancestors came from Morocco, and this is supported by Godby, who noted that their language is a mixture of Maghrebi Arab, ancient Hebrew, and local patois. For example, Abu, meaning father, became Yaba. For mother is close to the Hebrew word, which would be Im or Ima, those that don't know that. These Imo Yokwam Jews live in the Ondo district and have a copy of the Torah. Now, this is just one portion, okay? If you read this article, like I said, this article is incredible. The brother Yara has an amazing presentation. I love to give people credit for their work. That's why I'm not going to just keep going into this, because I want other people to be able to share their studies on these type of conversations as well. But what you find is their language, especially when we're starting to deal with West African jewelry, is going to be a mixture of languages in a lot of these areas. That becomes extremely pertinent and crucial to the conversation, because now we have to start identifying these people. And here's the beautiful part. When you go to this church, you find rich Nigerian, rich Ethiopian history in this church. You find the connections in the areas that you would expect to find of people who would have had some type of, what we say, Jewish, and we could easily call this a misnomer, but for right now, that's not the fight, right? But for those that we would find in this culture, they're represented at this church. So in a second, I want the brother Elder Yara to come in, but this, I wanted to show you, like, okay, so like if the brother Dante is sharing the source, if we're sharing the source or whatever, this is a Cambridge used source. This is a Cambridge.org used source. You can go to Cambridge.org, you can go to JSTOR and get it. The source is credible. Godby is a credible source as it pertains to these type of situations. This is not things that we're just making up. We're coming to these conclusions based on the preponderance of evidence that we are starting to see. And notice no one is still jumping out the window saying, oh, it's only Hebrew. It's definitely this. And no, we're showing you what all the scholars say. But what we do see is our proponents, those that I would say have personal agendas, are clearly trying to make one-sided arguments. And that's no way it could be this. There's no way it could be that. And I think we deserve and we've earned the right to sit down and have these scholastic conversations where we're not being ridiculed and beat upon and not given the opportunity to speak and actually look and see what the scholarship says.
And when you look at the scholarship at this juncture, it seems to be pointing towards the conversation opening up, not closing down.
Facts.
Con.
Can you speak to the God be connection a little bit there, Elder?
Yeah, I could do that. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, most of the information I would actually be basically from the article you just read, but there's some pertinent things in here that I want to speak out that I think that connects to the topic. If not, you brothers just reel me back in. I'm going to share my screen just a little bit. And it's basically going to be from the same article, but it's something that we talked about before that I wanted to make sure we took a look at. You brothers let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. So this is basically the portion of the doc. This is the article that I just read, Anonymous Hebrew just read. And I wanted to bring out something. So I'm just going to reread a little bit of what he wrote, of what he just read. But it also talks about, this is Godby, Alan Godby. And Dr. Alan Godby actually came to the conclusion that these particular Maghrebi Arabs, or what he referred to as Ephraimite Moors, right? Or the Imo Kwain, they were basically Black Jews that spoke and wrote in the lingua franca of their time, which was Arabic, right? And so let's go a little bit further here. So I'm just going to reread this just for a little bit, but I want to point out something. It says, in southern Nigeria, the natives called Black Jews the strange people. On the Imo Yoquaim, they are called the B'nai Ephraim, the sons of Ephraim. They claim that their ancestors came from Morocco. This is supported by Godby, who noted that their language is what? A mixture of Maghrebian Arab, ancient Hebrew, and local patois, right? For example, Abu meaning father became Yaba. Let me see. And for mother is close to the Hebrew. Is close to the Hebrew word. Now, is this section here, this line here, Maghrebian, a mixture of Maghrebian Arab, ancient Hebrew, and local patois. We're not postulating that this is the language admixture that we see on the pews, on the script that's written on the pews in Savannah, Georgia. We're postulating that the possibility of an admixture of Hebrew letters and Arabic writing, what most people tend to agree that it's there for both Hebrew and Arabic, is a possibility that this was a formulated type of language, or quote unquote, for lack of a better term, what we would say Ebonics or Creole type of writing, right? So I wanted to show this word right here. Can one of you brothers, I don't know more, can you get that definition for patois right there? Patois? Because I wanted to bring something out really quickly. Can you brothers hear me?
You want me to read it? I can give it to you.
Yeah, just read the definition of patois.
Yeah, a dialect of the common people of a region, differing in various respects from the standard language of the rest of the country.
And so it's a dialect, right? Not necessarily. It's more so if you read further in the definition, I believe it gives you more so of an understanding. it's more like a Creole. I think that one of the examples that they use,
it goes on further to
like,
say jargon or informal speech used by the particular social group.
Exactly. And is this not what Dr. Ephraim Isaac kind of says? He says it's you see this la ba ah da wow. You see this type of
I don't think he talks about trade language or something like that. But when he comes in the documentary, what's very interesting is he comes in talking about a Proto-Semitic script, right? And so what needs to be understood about that is that's why these languages can be blended in such a way and can be made into a trade language or into a patois or into some kind of local Creole, is because they have the same, the Afro-Asiatic. We're talking about potentially Hebrew, Arabic, and Ge'ez being on the pews, right?
Correct.
So they all have the same base to them, right? So it's easy for those kind of languages to be blended into a trade language. For instance, you can see this done in Spain as well, to where when the Moors were there, they had a mixture of Latin speaking peoples, Arabic speaking peoples, etc. And they melded all those languages into a trade language called Mozarabic, right? So it's, if they can do that with languages that aren't exactly the same, you can do it with languages that are similar way easier.
Agreed. And so, I'm postulating that it's a possibility, this may be what we're experiencing here, right? So it's not far-fetched, as some may try to postulate, that it's just it's incredible. You can't believe that. It could never happen. Well, we clearly see we have Dr. Alan Gabi here, who gives us a primary source here from Alan Gabi that says, look, this is what he's witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
He's recorded this.
Right. And what's interesting about this whole thing is this essentially even goes back to a conversation about migration, because there's things that open up with the conversation. One, how did Ge'ez get on the pews, right? And then two, this concept of the north-south migration of people in Africa, going from the Maghreb down to sub-Saharan Africa, needs to be understood. It really needs to be, so for instance, the Banu Ephraim, the Banai Ephraim are known in Nigeria, but in North Africa, they're known as the Banu Ifran, right? They were the Banu Ifran, and then came down and became the Banai Ephraim, right? So you'll find them as the Banu Ifran in other sources, right? And so going into Black History Month, I'm going to do my best to get Sister Dana Marnici Reynolds on here to talk about these subjects, about the migration of people through Africa, so we can get a clear picture of what's going on here, to understand why it's potentially possible for a trade language to be found on these pews, etc.
And just to support that, at least when I went on the tour, this is the assessment of the brother that was doing the tour guide, who wasn't just a tour guide. He has the credentials at that time even to back up what he's saying. He's saying when they come here, they have a trade language, right? He's saying that they are experiencing and exchanging concepts. More than just trade, though. They would write books, and they're writing about past historical things. They're writing fiction. They're doing all types of interactions with each other in various forms of language, and they do have some form of a trade dialect, right? He didn't proclaim to understand it and know it and all of this. He said you clearly see it, and this becomes imperative because when you start to study the oral traditions of all of these various quote unquote tribes that are Jewish within the other cultures in West Africa, they all have these oral traditions of coming from the Levant, and their dialect is different from the areas that they're in. Like the quote unquote Israelites that are with the Gagdagme, they will say they speak a different dialect than other people in that same tribe. Now, I want to answer a question, and the reason I want to answer this question is not to pick, but to speak to the very problem of what's going on. Sister Elaine 72 says, is this assessment to prove African Americans are Jews or Islamic? Number one, the assessment was really just to deal with the pews and the scholarship of the pews, right? But to answer the deeper question of what seems to be there, anyone going around that's saying that all African Americans are anything is mistaken. It's mistaken, right? There's the slave trade shows a vast array of deportation from various parts of not just West Africa, but East Africa. What we're saying, though, is if we really have to get into, or if you want to really press that conversation, then the answer for that is it's not so much to prove anybody as African Americans or Jews or African Americans or anything, it's to show the connection of African American quote unquote jewelry in West Africa and East Africa, because we are constantly told that it is asinine to even make that type of connection.
Correct.
We need to sit down and be able to be mature enough to have these scholastic conversations. We need to be able to sit down and have them without the insults and without the banter that we see. And this brother is going through this, right? He's going through these pictures, through these videos. Now, the other question.
Hold on, real quick. Let me pick up that question real quick. Like, so since we are not the people who came out talking about trying to link these pews to some kind of identity concept, that's not what we're doing. As a matter of fact, we came out because for instance, there were people out who came out talking about like a solitary concept of the pews, right? And there was a lot of back and forth on that. They got a little muddy and whatnot. And so we came out to bring clarity to the subject, being that we actually had background on this topic before the solitary concept came out. And so we wanted just to clear the air on a few things and whatnot. And some of those things are this here. Let me just read a couple of slides off the first presentation we did. If you're not familiar with the first presentation, go watch part 1, please. But in August of 2019, which is before the October and November conversations about this had in public, about solar trail, etc., whatnot, my brother Anonymous Hebrew went down to the church, put his hands on the pews, took these pictures right here on the screen. We had a conversation. We all talked about this stuff. There was even Christians on the conversation. G-Con, one of the urban apologists and whatnot. He confirms that we have this conversation, and we had other conversations beyond that one, right? But he publicly confirmed having this conversation, remembering Anonymous going down to the church. Anonymous reads Hebrew. He was able to identify a couple of Hebrew letters. And as a matter of fact, he identified the same Hebrew letters that Rabbi Saracen identified. But when we didn't even know that Rabbi Saracen had identified the same letters that Anonymous did until Garfield showed us or showed the public parts of this documentary and whatnot. But when we met up and when we talked about this and whatnot, and again, Anonymous gave us a long breakdown. Like we all kind of got emotional going through with it, you know what I'm saying? Like we all went there with him and whatnot, right? Because it's a big deal when you understand the different phases of the Torah and whatnot. It's a lot going on. It's not just walking into a church. But anyway, after much discussion, we came to the conclusion that if there was any written language on the pews, that most likely there would be more than one language, and possibly a trade language, potentially presenting many different tribal fingerprints. We do not claim that all the markings are a legible script, nor do we rule out miscellaneous markings or natural designs potentially being found within the wood itself. However, we also do not rule out single letter repetitions being marked on the wood of the pews. Going further. We do not take the position that sola trailing will likely be found on the pews due to time and proximity. However, we do take the position that the Hebrew language may potentially be found written in Arabic or in other Semitic scripts like Aramaic or Ge'ez. We also take the position that if Hebrew is not found on the pews, there would be no impact on any Hebrew or Israelite identity claims being made by early members of the church. It is clear people were self-identifying as Israel. Again, stay tuned. We got Benaiah coming on later at 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific, talking about this very topic. We're not linking this up to a concept of identity. As a matter of fact, we talk about it being, to date, check this out, to date, symbols of the Bakongo people, Amharic, Ge'ez, possible Hebrew letters, and the Ajami Arabic script have been identified within the church. There could be more languages found with more research. We owe it to our ancestors to find out what they left. That's what this is about. This has nothing to do with identifying as Israel or nothing like that. And that's what we're trying to clear up. And this is one thing I want to open. I'll pass it back to Anonymous, right? Like, so part of the church history is that it's possibly. Oh, let me get to it right quick because I got a slide on this. Hold on. Let me get to it right quick. It is believed that the church played a role in the Underground Railroad. If so, different African languages and symbols being found within the church makes logical sense. The question of other African languages arises, such as Yoruba, etc. Now, what people need to understand about this is, like, again, this information that the scholars are coming out with now, it now opens up this conversation to codes, ciphers, and trade languages. So when you understand the concept of the 9 patch on the roof, etc., whatnot, and the different types of things that are on the pews, it's very possible, very, very, very possible that there was an elaborate communication system for the Underground Railroad using this potential trade language and potential cipher conversation, and all that needs to be ruled out. And again, if this is our people's history, it would be a fantastic thing to be able to potentially discover how elaborate this system was for the Underground Railroad and how it actually worked and what we were doing to make it happen. This has nothing to do about separating ourselves from Africa and making ourselves Israel. This has to do with connecting ourselves to our ancestors and understanding what they went through, understanding what they left us. If they left us something on the pews, what did they leave us? We owe it to them to find out, because they went through a lot to put that stuff there. They went through a lot just again, if the church is connected
to build the church.
Thank you.
Like, if you understand what they had to go through just to build the church. That's why when we say, well, you should go down and take a look. Oh, well, I'm not going to go down and look at it. It's a slap in the face, because you have no idea the rich history that you're missing just on the process of how they met by the river first for all of these years. And then they're slowly going through this process of working in the slave fields during the day, and then or doing all of the menial tasks they have to do, and then having to carry this mud dirt over to the build site of the church to actually build up the bottom of it. And you see this red Georgia clay holding up this church, which by tradition is probably how the Underground Railroad was a portion or a part of the Underground Railroad of how the slaves would have come through here. To hear all of that rich tradition, it not only does it enlighten you, but it breaks your heart, it empowers you, it gives you all of these other things, right? And to know that our ancestors would have had all types of communications and all type of dealings, not just Israelites, not just West African, not just Arabic, but all of it mixed into one.
Mm-hmm.
That is an amazing identifying marker that lets you know how rich our history and our culture is, right? And all praise the Most High. Like the brother said, we was on this a year and a half ago. We just had other debates and things that came up. And honestly, we didn't think that it would turn into what it turned into. I know I didn't. I didn't think it was going to turn into this. I didn't even know they was having a conversation.
Neither did I.
We had already arrived at this conclusion. We had already arrived at this a year and a half ago. And so it's just sad that those who claim to be scholastic can't just go ahead and be scholastically honest and start to really explore all the information, because I guarantee you that you're going to find a lot of amazing information. Even the Israelites that say we're not African, we don't got no connection to that, you're going to find the amazing connection to the culture. And those that are African, well, Israelites don't have any connection to it. I've heard things like there is no West African, or there is no Levantine language that we see in West Africa. Come on, family. Like, a lot of these things are just claims. We're not trying to force and prove anything. We're just saying, look at the rich history. This is what we found, and let's go deeper.
Mm-hmm. Check this out. It is our position that any and all markings should be investigated to see what other African languages, if any, can be found within the markings on the pews. The First African Baptist Church should be considered a national treasure for anyone whose ancestors went through the transatlantic slave trade. We do not take the anti-African, anti-Hamite position. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't deny being African. We don't deny being Israelite. We don't see them as being mutually exclusive. We don't see being Israelite as an anti-African culture thing. We see it. We see the Israelite culture as part of African culture and part of African history. So it's not one of them kind of conversations. It's about letting sunshine being the best disinfectant, like so we can see what's going on, see what happened in history, and see what our people left us. Because if we don't investigate it, who else is going to do it? Who else cares about it? Who else cares about it?
Yeah, I agree. That's a fantastic point. And I just wanted to share my screen a little bit because I want the people in the chat and the people that are listening to kind of wrap their minds around what we're postulating and what we're hypothesizing here. We're not saying this is definitely this or definitely that in the terms of that there is a language that exists written on those pews, but what we're saying is there's a history there, right? That we must investigate. It's still all a part of African American history, wherever you put yourself on that spectrum. So let's not get lost. Let's not get lost in the of of whether where you come down on that spectrum or religion and creed and background and origin. For whatever people attack it for, we still have to understand that there's more. There's many layers, and we talk about this all the time. The work is in peeling back the layers, and layers of things that have been culturally appropriated or stolen from us. Things have been overlooked. Things that have not been recorded. Things that have been omitted from our historical record. Just simply to minimize the fact that we were there and we didn't just come from places from the west coast of Africa or from the Levant region or Northeast Africa. We just weren't bought on slave ships here as ignorant people. We had culture, we had trade, we had skills, metallurgy, all type of artisans and pottery work and woodwork. We came here with things that we see in our rich history and in our past that we were able to build empires.
Let me land back real quick and I'm gonna pass it right back to you.
Go ahead. Huh?
Once again, why you need to go to the church, to go to this amazing church and see that it's standing up but the thing that we tripped about and that we talked about when we were there was the amazing acoustics that exist in this building. The fact that these so-called unlearned slaves somehow in their time of coming from through this middle passage and all of this, they have moved to the point where they can create such a building that has it's this huge organ, right? That's back in the back of the church. And you can just imagine at one point in time the sounds that are emitting through this amazing church simply due to the acoustics. You don't learn how to build something like that overnight. Understand what I'm saying? Like these are trades that are passed down over and over again, like culture to culture, generation to generation. I think Moore said it best. This is a national treasure for us.
Okay.
The fact that it is a church, I mean, we could go into that, and that's incredible in itself. But this is a national treasure for us. Let's continue to keep studying it, continue to go deeper, and continue to see the connections. Keep going, Elder.
And I just wanted to share this really quickly, just share my screen really quickly. Because just to talk about the possibilities of conversation when it comes to the markings that we see on the pews. And this is one of the things that we started to really look at. And it's just a simple Google search. And what you see here is things like Kiowa Judeo-Tunisian Arabic Dictionary, right? Or Soro Judeo-Tunisian Arabic Dictionary, or Northern Soto Judeo-Tunisian Arabic dictionary, and this is the website I really wanted to come to. Here's another one, Milanese Judeo-Tunisian Arabic dictionary. But this is the website that I wanted to show you guys, the Endangered Languages Project. And what you see here is Judeo-Tunisian Arabic. And I'm not saying this is a language that is on the pews. We're talking about the possibility of having a conversation about the markings that we see and the possibilities of languages that have been lost and languages that we may not all necessarily understand. And so if you go to this website, it'll give you a breakdown. It'll tell you they've recorded many of the known languages that are really not in use today. And they look at the language, the metadata. And what we see here, it says also known as Arabic, but is classified as Afro-Asiatic, Semitic, and Arabic. If you take the construct of the conversation that we're having, if it's my understanding, if I'm looking at this correctly, brothers, and you guys can correct me on this, this is what we're looking at. Afro-Asiatic, Semitic, Arabic markings. Right?
Right.
And if you go...
my fault. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say yes, and then I'll let more go.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's what Ephraim Isaac was saying when he first came into the documentary. He was talking about a Proto-Semitic script, and understanding, like, and that's why we're talking about why these languages can blend. And again, my brother's talking about histories of them actually blending before. And when he's talking about like the Banu Ephraim, understand the Banu Ephraim were in North Africa. So when he's talking about like Judeo-Berber mixing and whatnot, he and Arabic, he's not tripping on it. You know what I'm saying? My mother's people are Maghrebi Jews, North African Jews and whatnot. Their songs, right? Their Hebrew has a lot of Arabic in it.
And the deeper you go into antiquity, the more you see this Afro-Asiatic connection. Like some of the stuff we've been studying, especially over the last 2 weeks, is incredible. Right? The rich history and connection just between Africa, the actual continent, and then what we see going into the Levant and even into Saudi Arabia and things like that is amazing in itself. But then to see how deep it permeates into West Africa, this is why scholars say we have to study these oral traditions of these people. Right? If there wasn't, we wouldn't have much information on the Underground Railroad if it wasn't for oral traditions and things like that. We getting to the point where if we're not careful, we wouldn't even know about the slave trade if it's not for oral traditions. If you got children that go to some of these schools, you understand that.
Yeah, they'll tell you that they were migrant workers.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah, great job, Moore. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, great job. Great job.
I'm about to close this out in a little bit. I want this to be like a little bit under an hour and a half if we can. So, go ahead and if you can, give your final thoughts on the whole thing and where you think this goes and whatnot, and then we'll close the thing out.
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, again.
Were you going to make a point though? Was that I discussed it? Was there something you want to say?
No.
Okay.
All right,
go ahead. You got it.
I think that what we're saying here, especially for myself, is that there's a rich culture and a rich history that we can dig more into, because as we continue to do more research, we find almost daily more and more things of our history that we haven't learned or we weren't aware of, or that even the fact that how it connects to us, not just in areas of faith, but just in areas of an identity that was stolen, misdirected, and misunderstood, even in our ritual practices and our cultural practice. And still some of this, what I'm starting to notice? Some of the things we find out in ancient ritual practice, we simply practice today without anyone ever teaching us those things. right? I look at the way that some of the young people dance today, right? And it clearly looks African, West African, Northeast African dance, down in Moroccan dance. You see this, and no one's teaching. These children aren't going to dance class, but they see this and they're able to move. They're able to express these same types of dance moves. Even the language. Years ago, they put it on us and they called it Ebonics, right? Because they told us we had a difficulty reading because we couldn't speak the King's language, right? And so they put this thing off on us, this particular vernacular, right? You know what? You guys are speaking in Ebonics. So when we say they say car, we say car, right? In some areas of the world, I mean of the United States. Or when they say neighborhood, we say hood, right? And so when they ask us if we want, if we, and this was actually something that they did, and this is the reason why they got rid of, what do you call, and I'm gonna close with this, why they got rid of a lot of the ACT tests. You used to have to take the ACT test in college, right, to get in college. And so they started getting rid of those tests because what they found out was it really wasn't a great tool to assess someone's intelligence, right? Simply because of the way we grew up, the way we communicate in families and in culture are completely different from others, from the Irish to the to the Ashkenazi Jews to Israel, to Israelites, to other. So it's you see these different things, and one of the things I remember completely is that they would ask us if they would have a question on the test. What do you use for what do you use to put water into? And one of the answers was what can hold the largest amount of water, and one would be a jug, a pitcher, or a jug, a pitcher, or a cup. And the African American children, they would pick either jug or cup because they didn't understand what a pitcher was, a pitcher of water. They would see a picture and they would interpret it as you're looking at a photograph. So they didn't choose that word. They didn't choose pitcher. That's because that's not a word that's often used. You see what I'm saying? In our culture, when we ask for a cup of water or a jug of water or a glass of water or a drink of water, we don't normally say, I want a pitcher of water. You understand what I'm saying? So we would fail those tests. But come to find out, as they got deeper into the research, then they would understand. I think they did it more so in California, where this
exactly
California schools,
because it was with the ACT, but it also happened a lot with the gifted and talented education programs. That's really where it was happening a lot at as well.
And so, like I said, that's why these types of studies, like Moore brought out, and in dealing with these pews and dealing with these things, is in depth, and actually what scholars are saying and how we deal with these types of things is important. And it's important how we begin to frame the conversations. And I just want to say shout out to my brother Orthodox Moor for this presentation. I think he puts us on the right path, and that's what we should be going forward, man. Anonymous C.
Ain't
tank on the ground, fam.
Still tank on the ground, fam.
You got it.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say once again, excellent presentation, brother. Hopefully people can receive this and we can continue to have the conversation in a respectful and educational manner. If you were blessed by this, please hit the like. Make sure to support the brother Sal. This is a great platform that he has allowed us to use. So we want to make sure we do that. It's love to both of these brothers, y'all. You know what it is, man. We do a lot of time building and studying so we can bring this information to the people. So it's nothing but love for everybody, man. As a group, let's keep growing. Let's keep going. Let's keep moving further. Let's keep moving the kingdom further. And, be careful. Don't let people steal your light and steal your witness, man. Like, We have a reason why we can make these claims and have these conversations. And that's all we're going to do now, is just continue to bring it out. So great job, Moore. Shalom. Obviously, everybody is going into Shabbat. Have a great, blessed evening. And don't forget, I know he's going to plug it, but just in case, don't forget to come back tonight at 5:30, right, brother?
You already know what it is.
Yeah, 5:30 this evening. You're going to get another great treat with the brother Benaiah Israel. He's going to come and really break down the culture that's going on there. So I know the brother's going to come and bring that in before he goes. But yeah, it's nothing but love. Great job. Peace to the chat. Peace to the family, man. Shalom. Enjoy your Shabbat. Great job, Moore. Great job, Elder.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, family.
Yeah, Shabbat
5:30
shalom.
Eastern, sister.
I know that at 2:30 Pacific. I know that. So yeah, one thing I want to touch on is again, this conversation has nothing to do with Israelite identity for us and whatnot. As a matter of fact, it has everything to do with African identity for us, in a sense to where we want to know what was left behind by our people and whatnot, all of them, because we know we're not all the same tribe coming through the slave trade. What I personally get out of this is an opportunity to educate the people on things they don't know. For instance, like the migrations in Africa, why there might be mixtures of languages, etc., whatnot. But on top of that, if it ends up being true that there is codes, that there is trade languages, that there is ciphers, etc., that there is an elaborate communication system dealing with the Underground Railroad and whatnot, that right there is a fantastic template for our people as African people in this country. I'm not talking about Israelites. I'm talking about like as multiple tribes that came through that same slave trade, who are not the same people but have that same experience. It's a wonderful template to look at, if it is in fact true, to be able to see how our people work. Even if it's not true, like just looking at the Underground Railroad period, you get to see how people of different tribes and whatnot that spoke different languages, had different backgrounds, were bound together by the same experience and found a way to work together for the betterment of them all, for the freedom of them all. And that's something that I think we forgot as a people in this country. This is why that place is a national treasure. But with that, family, I'm going to say peace and love. Shabbat shalom. Again, don't forget to come through and see my man Benaiah Israel talking about the people of that church identifying as Israel. Without the Pews, family. Again, without the Pews, coming in at 5:30 Eastern time, 2:30 Pacific. But with that, family, I'm going to leave us with one more clip and then one cut. And y'all have a good one.
Go ahead, Garfield. You got the floor. What you got to say on the whole thing?
I would just say that what we can do is go with what the scholarship has said. So if Dante has something where someone else has said something, and then look at what everybody who has actually done the work, and then draw your own conclusion. That's how you work with a scholarly from a scholastic point of view. But I do appreciate Dr. Ephraim Isaac being a part of this and giving some context. You know, he's saying there's no words there, but you have people saying like alphabetic letters in a chant like of some sort of magic. But the beauty of it that I got from it, that I'm glad that I knew about this, is that there are Africans that could write in the Americas before writing English.
That's right.
Shows that
Europe was still in a lot of ignorance. Just
right. Yeah. That's what the scholar said too.
Yeah.